Hi guys, my name's Laura Tilt. I'm a registered dietitian and a health writer. And in this session today, I am going to be sharing with you how to make your own summer ice lollies at home. Now this is the last in a 4-part series that I've been doing with SportsShoes, all about snacking during lockdown. If you've missed any of the other sessions, you can catch them over on the SportsShoes Running Hub. Just look for the at home series. So summer's here, almost, despite the rain today. So I thought it'd be a really nice opportunity to chat you through making through your own ice lollies. Now, a little known fact about me is that I used to have my own ice lolly company when I lived in London, and this was inspired by some travels that I did to Mexico. Now, Mexico, they have fresh fruit ice lollies, which are known as paletas, and if you go into a paleteria, which is a bit like a gelateria here that sells ice lollies, you can look into the freezer and see an array of colours. They have amazing flavours like mango and lime, pineapple and chili, raspberry, strawberry and vanilla, lots of different flavours. And I loved paletas when I was travelling through Mexico, and so decided to make some of my own when I got home, and I set up a small company called Paletta Girls. We traded in London for a couple of years. That company no longer exists, but I'm going to be sharing a couple of my favourite recipes from Paletta Girls with you today. So before I get started, I just want to talk about a few things that you'll need. So obviously you'll need something to freeze your ice lollies in. So I'm using these silicone moulds, which I bought online. They're really readily available from kitchen shops, and probably cost about £4 to £5. So they're really easy to get out of the moulds as well if you use silicone moulds. I've bought these ones that kind of stack flat because I've got a very small freezer, so I needed something quite compact. But if you've got a bigger freezer where you can pull out the drawers, you can get sort of ones that stand up this way that fit about sort of 6 to 8, contain 6 to 8 mould spaces for lollies. So if you don't have any moulds or you can't get hold of them, there are still other ways that you can make ice lollies. So you could use an empty, clean yogurt pot. So I'm sort of thinking like the Petit Filou size for mini ones, or just a standard yogurt pot. It's about 125 mils. Normally lolly moulds are about 75 mils, so they're a bit bigger than normal, but you could always sort of fill them 2/3 of the way. You could also use muffin tins as well, and as the lollies freeze, you can just stick the sticks in the top, or you could also use a loaf tin. A similar thing, you'd sort of make one giant ice lolly, and as the mixture freezes, you'll poke the sticks in, and then when it's all frozen, you can cut it into slices. So that's a few ideas on the moulds front. You will also need some sticks as well. So I got these, I think they're about £1 to £2 for between 50 and 100. Easily again to sort of buy online, or you might find them in some kitchen shops. Try to look for the food grade ones if you can, or you may find that if you buy some lolly moulds, you get some sticks sent with them. Now, just a couple of other points or words of wisdom when it comes to lolly making. So when I started making ice lollies, I wanted to make them just completely with sort of fresh fruits or fresh and dried fruits and no sugar. Now what I found out is that having a little bit of sugar in an ice lolly is sometimes important for textural properties. So the sugar molecules actually get between the water and stop the ice lolly being so hard in texture. So that's one of the reasons that I use a little bit of sugar in my recipes. And the other reason is that this is a bit of a nerdy fact for you, but when we eat things which are cold, they don't taste as sweet to us. So a good example of this is if you have a latte. So when milk's hot, it tastes a lot sweeter than if you if you drink an iced latte, which probably tastes a lot less sweet. So a lot of people want to add sugar to an iced latte. So for textural properties and for taste properties, adding a little bit of some kind of sweetener to your ice lolly is normally helpful, or helps it taste good. And the other thing to remember is about just the texture of ice lollies. So when you buy an ice lolly from the supermarket, when it's been manufactured, it's frozen really, really fast. So commercial sort of ice lolly makers have machines that will freeze ice lollies within anywhere from sort of 15 minutes to an hour. And this really fast freezing means that you get really tiny ice particles, and that is what makes the lolly quite soft. So when you bite into it, it's not crunchy. Obviously, we're going to be freezing our ice lollies today, and you'll be freezing them at home in a normal freezer, which is obviously absolutely fine, but it takes a lot longer. So probably takes between 4 and 8 hours to freeze your lollies, depending on what else is in your freezer. And that means that the ice particles, because the liquid has frozen really slowly, they'll be a lot bigger, and so the texture is going to be a little bit different to something you find in the shop, but still absolutely delicious. But I just wanted to make those points clear. Okay, so I'm going to share 2 recipes with you today. So these are 2 of my favourite recipes that we used to make in Paletta Girls, and the first one is called what we used to call the Coco Chanel. So this is cocoa, coconut milk and cashew nuts, and the inspiration for this lolly was that it's all vegan ingredients. So if you're following a vegan diet and you don't obviously then eat dairy foods, you might still want sort of a creamy, like chocolatey tasting lolly, and so that's where the inspiration for this came from. It actually turns out to be one of our best sellers. It's really delicious. So I'm going to talk you through the ingredients and then how to make it, and then I'm going to repeat with the second recipe. But we're going to be including all the method and ingredients on the Sports Shoes running hub as well. So don't worry if you don't have a pen or paper to hand, you can go over there to check what you need afterwards. Okay, so the Coco Chanel. So for the Coco Chanel, you will need half a can of coconut milk. Make sure you give it a good shake before you open it, and that's just to distribute the kind of solid and liquid parts evenly. So you need half a can of coconut milk. You will also need 100 grams of dates as well. You will need 25 grams of cashew nuts. Looking at my list here so I don't forget anything. You'll need 125 mils of some kind of plant milk. So if you do want to make these a vegan ice lolly, then use a plant milk. I'm using oat milk, but you could also use almond milk or soy milk. If you're not worried about them being vegan, or if you're not, it doesn't matter to you, then you can just use cow's milk. That's absolutely fine. So 125 mils of that. You also need 15 grams of some kind of cocoa powder. Whatever you have in the cupboard is available, or whatever you have available will be fine. This is actually a hot chocolate mix, so more than a cocoa powder, because that's all I've got today. It's about 15 grams of a cocoa powder as well, and a pinch of salt. So the first thing that you're going to do to make your ice lolly is to soak your cashews and your dates in boiling water. So I've had these soaking for about sort of 15-20 minutes, and you can see that the dates have gone really soft, and I've just done the nuts and the cashew nuts in the same bowl, and they're also, you can see, they're sort of really soft now. Now the reason you're doing that is basically to soften them, because we're going to blend everything together, and so soaking them in water just rehydrates the dates, makes the nuts really soft, so when you blend it you get a really smooth, I guess puree, smooth liquid for your ice lollies. So once you've soaked them for 15 minutes, you can even for longer, it doesn't matter, but about 15 minutes, you'll drain those off. I'm just going to do that now. It's difficult with a tiny camera because you can't see so much what I'm doing. But I'm going to drain them off, and then I am going to make this in a smoothie maker. So I'm using a NutriBullet cup. So you can, any kind of smoothie maker is fine. Alternatively, you could use a hand blender, and I'm going to use that for the second recipe, but either or is absolutely fine. So in the blender cup, I've already added the half a can of coconut milk and 125 mils of the oat milk as well that I'm using, and I've popped a pinch of salt in there. Now I'm going to tip in my drained cashews and dates. Hope they all fit in there. And I've also measured out 15 grams of my cocoa powder, so I'm just going to pop that in there. And now I'm going to blitz everything together. So effectively you're making a smoothie. So just bear with me whilst the noise of the blender goes on. Okay, so NutriBullet's quite powerful, so it does do this quite quickly, but essentially you want to blend it until you've got just a really smooth mixture. I wonder if I can get there just to show you. But essentially, yeah, just looks like a chocolate smoothie at this point. Now, at this point, you're ready to pour it into the molds. I would suggest pouring it into a measuring jug first, so that you can pour it between the molds easily, much easier than trying to sort of stop it from the cup. And you want to fill up your molds and leave a little bit of room in the top, and that's because the mixture will expand slightly as it freezes. And then they can go into the freezer for 4 to 8 hours before you can pop them out. So that's literally it. That's the first recipe. Super easy. And you can do it sort of within 5 minutes if you've after you've soaked your dates and cashews. So that's the first recipe done. So the second recipe I wanted to share, let me just make sure I can see my ingredients list. So the second recipe is for raspberry and hibiscus lolly. So hibiscus, if you've never heard of it before, or you're not sure what it is a type of flower, and it's actually dried. So it looks a bit like this. Get some out for you. There we go. So this is a type of dried flower that's used to make tea. Now in Mexico they have a drink called Jamaica, which is like a sort of, I guess it's like a cold tea or a sort of cold juice that's made with hibiscus flowers, and it's really delicious. The flavour is probably close to something like cranberry. So we're going to make the second lolly from raspberry and hibiscus tea. But if you can't get hold of hibiscus, because it's not something that you might necessarily be able to find in the supermarket, you can order it online, or you might find it in an organic shop or a shop which sells dried fruits. If you've got like a zero waste shop that sells sort of dried fruits and herbs and spices, you might find it in there. As an alternative, you can just use a fruity tea bag. So something like a raspberry and cranberry tea bag, or I think you can actually get hibiscus tea bags. You might just be able to buy them as they are and make your tea from that. So if you're using hibiscus flowers, you'll need about 15 grams of them. And basically, you're just going to pop them into just cold water actually to make a tea. So I've had these flowers soaking for probably about half an hour, maybe an hour. As you can see, we've got a really nice sort of cranberry looking, it just looks like a fruity tea. So I'm going to drain that off now. So I've just got the liquid. But if you're using a tea bag, then exactly the same thing. You'll just make your tea and leave it to infuse for half an hour. You can actually even leave it overnight as well, that's absolutely fine. But essentially you just want to have a cup of fruity tea to make your ice lollies with. So once you've made your fruity tea, you're going to pour that into either your blender cup again, or I'm just going to make this in a jug this time. So you'll pour your liquid into there, your tea, and then the other ingredients. So you're going to need 150 grams of raspberries. I've just defrosted these, this is why they look a bit liquidy. And using frozen raspberries is absolutely fine. They're all going to get blended up together anyway, so no need to buy fresh. If you do have something you want to use, that's fine. But frozen are really great because you can just sort of pop them out the freezer a little while before you need them, and they tend to be less expensive as well. So 150 grams of raspberries, your tea's in there. I'm going to be using some honey as well. So I said about 3 to 4 tablespoons. Can tell this is gonna be tricky to get out now. I should have warmed this up first. But you need sort of, about 3 to 4 tablespoons of honey. It's probably about sort of 50 to 60 grams. See if I can take the lid off and already. There we go. And you might want to warm your honey up. You can warm it up, the pot up in a bit of sort of cup of hot water if you find that it's tricky to get out. So about 3 to 4 tablespoons of honey. And then I like to put in a squeeze of lemon as well. It's not essential, but citrus actually really helps to sort of brighten the flavours, so that's nice. So I'm just going to squeeze a lemon into there. And that's it. That's all you need for the ingredients. And then I'm just going to blend this now with a hand blender, just to show you the other way of doing it. So again, you could make it in a blender cup, that's absolutely fine. I'm just going to use a hand blender this time, so excuse the noise. And again, you just want to blend it until everything is is a sort of smooth puree. See, this is really lovely. It goes such a lovely colour, this recipe. So again, you can see it's just a raspberry liquid at this point. So again, you're just going to now pour this into the moulds. Pour it in evenly between your moulds and make sure your sticks are attached, and pop it in the freezer for 4 to 8 hours. And that's it, you're done. The next bit is just about being patient until your lollies are ready to come out. Try not to open the freezer too much to sort of keep checking on them, because every time you open the freezer you'll let sort of lots of warm air from the room in, and then it will take your freezer a while to sort of cool down again. So try to be patient for at least 4 hours. Then you can go in and see if your lollies are set. And you should just be able to sort of like, if you can sort of peek into the sides or, you know, wiggle about the sticks, and if they're sort of not moving and everything feels pretty solid, then you can give them a go for taking out. If there's any sort of liquidy signs of there sort of still being a bit of liquid to freeze, don't take them out yet, leave them in for a bit longer. These silicone moulds make it really easy to press out the lollies, so these are super easy to use. But in the past we have used sort of plastic moulds, and they're a lot more difficult to get the lollies out. So my top tip there would be to get a bowl of, just fill up a bowl with sort of warm water, not hot water, and actually just with the outside of the mould, if this was your mould, you would just dip it into the warm water for sort of 10 to 20 seconds, and you should find that your lollies come out a lot easier. So I'm just going to give you, show you what, this is a bit of a Blue Peter moment. I'm going to show you what they look like afterwards. So I had some of the raspberry ones in here freezing last night, and here they are. So they look really good. So I obviously use the sort of twister style moulds, which has left a nice pattern on them. But yeah, the colour's really, really great, really vibrant, and they taste delicious as well. And if you wanted, I haven't done it this time, but what you can do is you could, at the bottom of your mould, you could put a bit of yogurt in there and then pour your raspberry liquid on top, and then what you'd get is a really nice sort of swirly, yogurty white pattern on the lolly as well. So lots of things you can try. You could also put some bits of granola in. We used to have a sort of strawberry granola and yogurt lolly, which was really popular as well. So I hope that that's inspired you to get making your own lollies at home. It's really fun. Obviously you get to control the ingredients that go in, and once you've tried these, I don't think you'll go back to having supermarket lollies, because they are really, really delicious and loads of flavour in them. As I said, we'll be sharing the recipes for these lollies on the Sports Shoes Running Hub blog, so do go over there and check them out. And if you do make your lollies at home, I'd love to see your creations. You can tag me at NutriTilty and Sports Shoes as well, and we would be delighted to see how you've got on in the kitchen. I hope you've enjoyed the session today. I've really had a great time sharing some ideas with you about healthy snacking. I hope you are all staying safe and well, and I'll see you next time.